But he gave it. I just want to compliment Hans. Found out in priesthood meeting that he had a talk to give in sacrament meeting. So, and he was giving the lesson in priesthood, co-teaching. So during Sunday school, he went to class, but he prepared his talk during class, and the teacher knew he had a talk to give, so that was good. And then he gave a wonderful talk for Strength of Youth on using good language, and it was excellent.
We're just proud he knew the rule about bad language. We didn't even know he knew it.
Yeah, he does. He's wonderful. And he also had to bring the bread for sacrament, so he had a lot of going on.
Oh, no wonder you need to relax.
Yeah. Okay, I want to get mine in.
Hey, enough about Hans. Let's talk about Beth.
I'm way more important than you. I'm alive still.
Hans!
Guys, we love Hans.
Okay.
Robin's gonna share.
I just didn't know Leif. First time I ever saw Leif, he was in his coffin, and and I didn't know more, of course. So, but I knew Carl and Carol Jean. I want to tell a story about how my first impressions of both. When I first met them, I thought, well, they're nice couple and stuff. Then I started getting into it. And I remember going over to the old house on Glenna, and Shar was there. And Trish and I walked in, and we sat at the table, and we were having a family discussion, just the two of us, Carl and Carol Jean and Shar. And Shar proceeded to talk about all of her mental health history. And I thought, this is a very transparent family, because I'd never heard any open discussion like that. She's talking about, I was in this institution, I was doing this, and I was this, and I thought, oh, great, and, you know, and welcome to the family. And I'm thinking, what do you got? And but I also remember how sweet and enveloping Carl and Carol Jean were, and it was just amazing to see this spirit. I think this is probably not the best way to put it, but not in spite of the challenges, but almost because of it. They had so gotten on top of it and overcome it so well, because it's like, oh, this is our daughter, this is our wonderful daughter who's had these challenges, but hey, life's great. And then Carol Jean, I remember the first time I went to a family gathering, and Trish didn't really warn me very much about this. She just said, we're going to have, sit down and have a gathering. And I walked in, and Carol Ann hands me this sheet music and said, you're going to sing a solo tonight. I said, what? I was expecting to just hear maybe a piano or two or solo or some people playing, and that was it, but we're all participating. And again, another family that was very unusual to me, but still unusual. And she handed me this music, and it was Josh Groban. And I'd heard the name. I didn't know any of his music, nothing. I mean, I'm an Eagles fan. I'm country rock stuff. So I tried to get through it, as best I could, and she just thought it was great. She said, oh, you have a great voice, and I'm thinking, really? Are you serious? I was just blown away by this openness, this outpouring of this enveloping, this sort of gathering in, this tendency that they both had. And then last, to this day, I'm still amazed that I did that and that she did it to me. I mean, it's just
she'd get people to do stuff that was way out of their comfort zone.
Yeah. And then I wanted to do something special for Trish, and so I asked. Now you've all done this, I'm sure, but I asked Carl for Trish's hand in marriage. I went to their house, and just he and I talked, and I asked permission to marry his daughter, and he was touched by that. He didn't really say much. He just said thank you, and his tears came to his eyes a little bit. And so I just remember that he's such a gracious man to the very end. And the last thing is, I'll never forget the day he died, because it was the day of our daughter's 6th birthday. That very day. And I've told this story before, but I remember when we had a cake out in our kitchen waiting for the girls to come in and have their party, and everybody was in Carl's room waiting for the end. And he finally went, and I walked into the kitchen, and the girls were sort of standing there. They're sitting there. Forlorn's not the right word, but they're kind of like, oh, they all forgot us, you know. And so I went back into the room and invited her to come in for cake. And it was the sweetest juxtaposition that the gospel bridges so well of this death and then this celebration of life, young life. And it happened in our home. I'm so grateful for that. Thank you all who were there for
I
participating.
think everybody was there.
Thank you.
But
Also
it was
everybody
maybe
here.
he was at your place.
Yeah.
It was our
And
place.
rather than a
Yeah,
care center
right.
or all these other places that people go. He
Yep.
died in a home.
Yeah, to bridge off that, because I know Adrian's not here, but she would want to share how neat it was for her to play the cello at the end. She was in the room playing the cello when Bestafar passed away, and how I wasn't there, but I guess like everyone came in the other room kind of singing "It's a Birthday," like as it happy birthday, like best and worst song, like at the same time of like, yeah, just cool, this bridge of going and birthdays, and anyway, it's just kind of neat.
Now, when Paige and I were little, Bestafar, he's always been in the roofing business, and he had a job in Moab. And Paige remembers, we got to drive down there with him, and we stayed in a hotel. We were just little. We thought it was the coolest thing. And then we went to the restaurant for breakfast, and we had ham and potatoes and
There were
two
shredded
eggs.
potatoes and ham
And two eggs.
and 2 eggs
And toast.
and toast.
And,
Big, huge
and we
breakfast.
always called that a Moab breakfast. So when we got up, we'd ask Mom to cook us a Moab breakfast.
We'd just say, "Can you cook us a
Moab
Moab?"
breakfast. That was our first big, nice restaurant. It was kind
Yeah,
of
because we didn't eat out a lot.
never ate out. It was
We had
just,
too many kids.
and it
On
was,
our motorhome trip, we had to count 100 McDonald's before that stop. And we didn't really eat out ever, but we went clear. I don't remember where we hit the McDonald's. I'm not even sure. Do you that we're on that trip? Do you guys remember?
I don't remember actually eating
I
McDonald's.
didn't hardly ever eat out. Yeah.
Yeah, Kentucky Fried
Okay,
Chicken.
I'm gonna.
oh, and the other thing about Bestamore is she was health conscious. And when we were growing up, we every once in a while she would say, "We're going to eat a carrot. We're going to eat some carrots, and then we're going to go over to the high spot and get a chocolate malt for dinner." But we had to have our carrots first before we got
To
the malt, so it would be
balance.
help to balance it out.
And then I found out later that Debbie Naylor and Tana Naylor, they would get a hamburger and a malt. And to me, those were like 2 separate complete meals. That was like eating 2 meals. Because for us, a malt filled us up with the carrot sticks. And it was like, and a hamburger would fill you up. So to have both together, it was inconceivable. That's funny. When we were little. Over there where Arby's was. That's where the high spot
Yeah.
was.
Okay, I have a.
We're going back a lot of years.
So on the broadcast today, we sang a lot of Memorial Day songs, and one of the verses was, "I see a distant hand and feel its glow. The hand I hope was there at last I know." It's talk about passing, and the last song of is "Freedom." It's about, and that's the last word of the song. But do you know that was Father's last word?
Oh, yeah.
When he was
That's the
leaving
last
his
word.
body, the last word he said was freedom.
Paige and I heard him. That was last
I could
He
hear
was
too.
there and he was not really talking much, but all of a
Yeah.
sudden we both heard him say freedom.
So I
And
think
that-
he was anticipating, you know, I'm sure he was reading this and sensing to be released from the body. It's a form of freedom. Listen, I want to say when Dad lived up at Eric Luminisa's basement, one thing I missed is when I would prepare meals, if my children were done eating it, like if it was leftovers on the third day or whatever, I would often take Dad up food. And he always thought I was a great cook, and he was so grateful for whatever I brought him. And honestly, when I'm cleaning up my fridge, I miss him.
Yeah.
He would eat stuff and be appreciative.
He did.
He was, and I think both of our parents taught us to be grateful in all things. And I'm really grateful for that example because it gives me courage in my own challenges to think, just have the spirit of trust in the Lord and be grateful. And I think not just our parents, I think that came from their parents. And I think that's a godlike quality that is our heritage, is being grateful.
And gentle, being gentle.
I want to share about Mom. I have many memories. There was a season where she would do a lot of catering and basically used us as her helping hands. And we would go and Mom, I can't even imagine her doing this, but she would create these meals. I remember there was the pork chop meal for a long time, and we'd go up to the Utah Sons of Pioneers, and people would pay to have a big sit-down meal, like a big group of people.
Like 200 people.
And we were the ones. Dad was, assisting, getting all,
all
the
the
food up there,
waitresses.
and we would serve and clean up, and we did this for several times. There was a season where we
You know
were,
why she did it?
we were in the catering business.
Okay, but for the missionaries. For the missionaries to send money.
And the fact that she could run the household though with the kids and then still take on these catering jobs, and it was amazing.
Wait, she did it to send money, the money that she earned, then she'd send it to the missionaries?
Well, it was for
For
different
maybe
Different
our
things.
missionaries.
augment.
And one other story I want to
Music
share.
augmenting
One other
too.
story I want to
Lot
share
of
about Dad. When we were little, we used to go to the Salt Lake Tennis Swimming Club like every day in the summertime. That's pretty much where we would go.
Yeah.
And Mom would drop us off in the morning, and then Dad would pick us up at night after work.
Yeah.
And so I have these memories of getting in the car with Dad, and we would just root for him to go over the in the road on the sidewalk. There were these like
The bumps leading into
bumps.
driveways.
Yeah, bumps leading into driveways. And so Dad would go really fast and go really fast over these bumps, and we would just go down the street, go woo, woo, woo.
It was like being on a
And
ride.
it was like being on a roller coaster. And he had,
We loved
I guess
it.
he didn't care about ruining his tires or anything.
Before seat
And
Oh, the
one other
showers.
thing about Mom and Dad in the car when he would be kind of wild driving, I do remember Mom oftentimes, like if we were going to get in a crash or something, Mom would go, Carl! And she'd throw her arms across
Yeah, just like
Charles.
that.
Carl! Oh, Carl. And I'm like that too with your shorts sometimes. I think I developed that. 'Cause I,
And when we were really small, we used to go on vacations up to Granite Creek Hot Springs, and it was a 1957 Bel Air Chevrolet. It had the fins on it, and we couldn't all fit in the 2 seats because they didn't have 3-seated cars. So Dad would open the trunk and put a stick in and put a wire, and then he'd lie in the back with pillows, and we would sit in the trunk and ride in the trunk and breathe that exhaust all the way up. We sat in the trunk. We all wanted to be in the trunk.
It was on the way to
Bear Lake, but also Granite
And so
Creek Hot
people would be behind, we'd be looking at the traffic behind us, waving. One big parade to us. Kids are like, man, are you kidding me?
I want to share something about Bestafar. So a cool thing. So Bestafar was just always, like from day one, he was just always there for you, and particularly me. I remember just a couple stories when we were living in Saipan and we had to cut our trip short, and my mom came back with Hans, and then I was scheduled, I guess, or I was supposed to come back as well. Bestafar flew all the way out to Saipan and flew back with me. He was the one that came and picked me up, and I remember sitting on the plane as like a 4-year-old, and he went off and like laid down across a couple seats because the plane was rather empty, and he just like fell asleep, and I just was sitting there alone on the plane as a 4-year-old. Yeah, I turned out alright. But also
the scar,
later,
though, because you remember.
yeah, no, I really do remember it. And then also, another thing, my first day of high school, I got really sick, and my mom was up in the canyon somewhere hiking, and my dad was at work, and so Bestafar came and picked me up. Like my first day of high school, I got sick and had to leave early, and he was the one that came and picked me up. And recently, just as like after they passed, there's been sorry. There's been a couple times where it gets rough, you know, and I was able to not only I was able to receive a blessing from my father one of these times where it was getting rough, and just randomly in the blessing, he had no previous knowledge of anything. He just suddenly said, "I bless you that your grandparents, your Bestafar will be watching over you." And ever since then, I've always felt them, particularly Bestafar. I really felt that connection to him, and him being able to watch me throughout my life after he's passed and be able to help me in my rough spots. And it was also during my patriarchal blessing that I received a couple months ago. I had this distinct impression as the patriarch blessed me that I would be able to receive the guidance of my ancestors and stuff. I had this distinct impression that Bestafar had stood behind me and placed his hand on my shoulder and just was there. He was there for me. And I had this image of Bestimore in front of me, kind of reaching her hands out to me, and they were just both there to be with me. And so anytime I feel it's rough, or anytime I have a hard time transitioning between homes, I always feel the presence of my grandparents there to help me through it, because they were just always willing to help and always there for me.
I have one.